Hello, world. Welcome to episode 7 of Viva la Renaissance, your podcast about artists and eccentrics that have followed their dreams, walked an unconventional path, and shaped the world around them using their imaginations. I am here in the Renaissance headquarters in downtown Los Angeles, aka at my desk. And I like to, start the episodes off by just giving updates about what I'm doing as part of this podcast, because I believe the artistic process is really important to hear about. It's how the sausage is made, and it's about how we take things from conception into creation, how we make an idea into reality. And that's just useful for everybody. This is like something, the type of magic that we all do in our lives. And being an artist, we just become experts at it. And my main project at the moment is I'm creating a new online act development course. And this is a real labor of love, and I'm really excited and passionate about, partly because I took a break from teaching act development almost about 10 years ago. I started to feel like I was giving away too many of my ideas, and I just felt the scene was oversaturated, and I started to feel like I was training my replacement in a way, and it was like my ideas were precious to me, and I felt like they needed me. So I just decided not to teach as much and to focus on making the best work that I could. And now, many years later, I have a storage unit full of all my ideas. I certainly did that. I've been very, very productive, but I do feel differently, and I feel some urgency around helping my field to evolve artistically, so that there's more opportunities and just better quality work and more respect for the art form. There isn't really so much of a cabaret culture in America, and I want to change this. I want more cabaret venues. I want better and bigger shows to perform in. I want broader audiences for who sees my work, and I want to take my work into other media too. So after just a lot of reflection on my past experience and thinking about where I want to go still, I decided to come back to teaching, and I've missed it so much. I actually really love connecting and working with people in this way. So it's a little overwhelming too, because I feel like I have so much wisdom, and I'm just so excited that I'm really trying to figure out how to pack it all into 6 weeks and give people the most bang for their buck. But I'm doing my best. I do not take this lightly. I want everyone to get the most out of it, and I feel invested in helping people evolve. So if you're a performing artist and you want a mega dose of creativity and a real kick in the pants to take your act to the next level, then get your button rolled over on my website. It's trixlittle.com/classes. You can read all about it. And I do not do things half-assed, and this is no exception. So I'm really looking forward to this, and I think it's going to be a great ride. So climb on board if you dare. And, it's interesting when I talk about cabaret. Most people don't even know what I'm talking about. I didn't even call my work cabaret until I started traveling internationally. In America, cabaret is sort of thought of just as torch singers, or maybe it's like singing songs from musical theater around a piano, or they just think it's stripping, like a strip club. And sure, those are certainly offerings that could be in a cabaret, but in Australia and Europe, there's a much broader sort of vision for it, and there's much more of a cabaret culture. People go out to see shows that include circus and comedy and magic and drag and puppets and any type of variety art, and including singing, and so that kind of all falls under the umbrella of cabaret. And I really like that the word, just because it's more open. It's like it can include all of these things and more. It's like art. What is art? What is cabaret? But my work has always included physical movement, music, and storytelling. So when I started to travel abroad and was put in the cabaret genre, I just felt right at home. And I do both what I consider as like traditional cabaret, which is essentially a variety show where the format is host comes out, introduce an act, and host act, and there's not really any continuity between the acts. It's just a really good, fun variety of things. So I like that type of show, and as well as what I call cabaret theater, which is kind of more long form. I have a bunch of these shows that are like between 60 and 90 minutes, and there's more of a narrative, and all the acts reinforce the story or the theme. So it's much more cohesive in that way. So I just also pulled out this book on Berlin Cabaret by Peter Jelovich. This book is something my friend Mike Lee gave to me. He's a friend and photographer. And so he's kind of describing nuances of types of live performance in the Weimar cabaret era. This is all pre-World War II. And in the German language, they actually differentiate between cabaret, which is with a C, which is more of a strip show, and cabaret with a K and two T's, which is more about social criticism and political satire. But there are many other styles that include revues, which have big production numbers, and agitprop, which is not a term that I hear so much these days, but he mentions it a lot in the book, which is the most political style. And then really the intimacy with the audience is one of the main characteristics, with various degrees of showing or telling. But he has this to say: I'd like to propose the following definition, or at least image, of an ideal type cabaret. It consisted of a small stage in a relatively small hall where the audience sat around tables. The intimacy of the setting allowed direct eye-to-eye contact between performers and spectators. The show consisted of short 5 or 10-minute numbers from several different genres, usually songs, comic monologues, dialogues, and skits, less frequently dances, pantomimes, puppet shows, or even short films. They dealt in political satire or parodic manner with topical issues, sex most of all, commercial fashions, cultural fads, and politics least of all. These numbers were usually presented by professional singers and actors, but often writers, composers, or dancers would perform their own works. The presentations were linked together by a conferencier. I did not know that word before. A type of MC who interacted with the audience, made witty remarks about events of the day, and introduced the performers. So that's just a basic definition of what I'm talking about. And then there's another part here I like. That says, cabaret was something of a tease. It simultaneously satirized and sustained the erotic energy of its day. So cabaret is on my mind today, as are puppets. This episode is starting a new series that I'm doing on the Los Angeles puppet scene, which really seems to be booming. I was already in love with puppets. The Muppet Show is one of the reasons I think I even went into show business in the first place. And, here living in LA right now, there are billboards up for Crank Yankers. The Dark Crystal just came out on Netflix, and the Bob Baker Marionette Theater is just about to open their second show in their new space. And so this interview today is all about a collaborative friendship between two of my favorite talents that I've met here in LA, Jared Ramirez and Molly FITE. And they are both employees and they are employed as puppeteers at Bob Baker Marionettes, and they are the creators of a monthly comedy puppet show called When Puppets Are Your Only Friends. I love that title so much. I have been lucky enough to perform in a couple shows with them, and I really love what they do. They are friends, collaborators, and comedians, and they are seriously passionate about puppets. So please enjoy. Sitting here in the very colorful and puppet-filled apartment of Jared Ramirez, and we are here to talk about the world of puppets. I just want you each to introduce yourselves to the listeners. Jared, why don't we start with you?
Hello, I'm Jared Ramirez, and I am a puppeteer. And this is my friend, Big T Up.
Hey, I'm Molly Fite. I'm a comedian, puppeteer, actor, slashy.
How did you guys get into puppets? Because I met you through the Bob Baker Marionette Theater, which is one of my favorite things in Los Angeles that I've discovered, and I've been really lucky to drink beer and wine after the shows and hang out with these guys a lot. It's just kind of feels like a little clubhouse over there, and it makes me really happy to go there all the time. So
Always
um,
happy to see you there.
it's great. It's a great place. So just give us some background. How did you get into this?
Well, I've been doing this for about actually close. Well, I've lost count, but I've been saying 8 years. It's in that window. I've been pursuing it for that long anyway. With a like more of a background in, I guess, like school drama. Like I was uh, on and off the stage. No, yeah, I was really into acting like growing up, and then found music and started playing bass and guitar and stuff. And I guess around, yeah, 8 or so years ago, I was like revisiting kind of stuff that I loved in my childhood, namely like Muppets, and of course Labyrinth is like always the first thing that I think of, and kind of the biggest thing in my childhood, or like all the things that kind of make me who I am today in one movie. David Bowie, like Jim Henson, and yeah, like the George Lucas character stuff in there. It's a wonderful. Anyway, so like revisiting that, and then actually with an adult brain and being like, oh my gosh, puppets and the whole behind the scenes, the stuff that you don't think about, like kind of keep from you as a kid. At least like that's part of the illusion that for a lot of the puppetry out there. And what's so great about Bob Baker and doing it, working with marionettes in a live theater environment, is how interactive it is compared to, I guess, when I was growing up, not really thinking too much about the nitty gritty of how to make a puppet show. And I just love that it can be so many different things. And so, yeah, so marionettes I've been working with for closer to like almost 4 years now at Bob Baker exclusively. And yeah, it's just blown open my perception for it. So yeah, and I think like the music that that it's very musical and like choreograph and kind of hitting beats like based over there at Bob Baker. So it's like all the acting stuff, the music stuff, it all kind of comes together in a wonderful way with puppetry. And having an improv background, which is where I met Molly. Actually, we both got to train at the Jim Henson Company doing hand puppets over there, like real Henson puppets being trained by the puppeteers over there. And so, yeah, improv, music, acting, it all.
Okay, hold on, because we're gonna talk about the Jim Henson training that you had, but I want to hear, Molly, how you got into this.
So kind of by accident. So yeah, I came to LA 2008, and I had just graduated from UC San Diego. I got my MFA in acting, and I was like doing the grind, and I was on jury duty, and I saw an audition on Facebook for the Jim Henson program. And I submitted and auditioned and got it, which was like a miracle because I never get things that I audition for. I always get like things through friends and people I know. So, yeah, that was really cool.
How did that work? Like, what was it? What were you responding to? What was the ad you were responding to?
It just, someone had posted that they were doing a diversity program. And I submitted like my headshot and resume, and then and then I got an audition, and so yeah, it was. I think when I auditioned, I didn't really realize who was in the room. Like they looked familiar to me, but I didn't know it was like Brian Henson and Kevin Clash.
Wow.
Like when I saw Kevin, I was like, I think I know him, but I thought from like theater acting for some reason. Anyway, but I think that helped because I was way more like chill. If I had really known, like, yeah, and so that's how.
Like when you're in the presence of puppet celebrities, you might act different.
Yeah, exactly. I think if and I was also in the middle of doing Groundlings, so that was helpful too because Patrick Bristow, who was there, he is from Groundlings. So yeah, and I've been doing improv for a long time everywhere. I've done UCB, Second City, Groundlings. And so, yeah, I got into that program and I just had like the best time. It was so fun. And it really re inspired me also to do improv more. I was like, oh, improvising with puppets is way more fun.
You guys are both very, very funny comedians. So how long was that program? And this is the same one that you were in as well?
Yeah, that's how we met.
Yeah. So tell me more about that time. How long was this program that
It was a summer long thing. It was just like the most incredible thing. We got to come in. It was twice a week, yeah? Or was it? Yeah. So twice a week, and they would cook for us. Like, it was so
Nurturing.
Yes. Yeah. You'd come an hour before class would begin, and they would serve dinner, and it was just like in the Henson kitchen, and there's all this beautiful, like, memorabilia stuff behind glass in there. And the person cooking was actually the mother of Brian. So, okay. Yeah. Brian Henson is the son of Jim Henson, but his assistant is this wonderfully, like, bubbly, colorful person who has a different fairy outfit every day, like wears wings. She's incredible, and her mom actually was cooking for us. So It was like just like right when you got there, it was like, wow, this is like mom and pop, but in like the coolest way, like what you would hope for a company like that. And it was so great. And then, like Molly was saying, like that's when I went into that audition room, like everything was riding on it because I knew every single person in there. And like I couldn't have been more, like, I was like, oh, I really shot myself in the foot by, like, coming at this, like, I don't know, like, I think they were looking for anyone in between improv, comedy, and puppetry background. Like, they were taking anybody because they're Henson, they'll get people up to speed on the puppets.
Yeah.
And so it was just crazy, and meeting so many people, like, who had a variety of background, who, like, we were all, like, Molly and I had this great chemistry, but like totally different background. I mean, she's way like has more experience. You're like a seasoned improviser, actor, and stuff. And it was just something that I'm like a schoolyard clown. And puppets, like, yeah, I don't know. I think when I found puppets 8 years ago, that's when things really clicked. I was like, oh, this I think might be.
So do you think, were you more of like a technical person? Like, what were you doing before your puppet?
I mean, like, I like really love doing voices. I think I fantasized about being a voice actor, but it feels like a really hard industry to penetrate. Like, like the movie or music industry, the same way. And like, I don't know what, like, puppets outside of Sesame Street or say like some Muppet production, when you're first getting into it, one kind of thinks like that is the pinnacle of like success, or like that is kind of the only way to measure what you're doing on a professional level. Other than that, it's just like play, right? And especially, I think it kind of gets even more lumped in with just a little, like, not something you do just for fun and can't really take it, next level with the hand puppets, maybe because they're more readily available today for children, hand puppets. Mm-hmm. And you almost don't even see professional grade marionettes, like, at least in the States, just readily available for purchase to practice with. They sell like little Mexican ones that are great for decoration. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just getting to really find a place for it, especially like at Bob Baker, an institution of several decades, where there is like a home for us to be able to explore improv in this environment that isn't so cutthroat as those other industries.
What did it cover this summer with the Henson family? Were you like making things? Was it like from creation to performance? Were you working with their puppets? How did it work?
So there is a show called Puppet Up, and it's a live show and over there at Henson, and it was really trying to like get people to see an improv show with puppets where you're actually seeing the performers on a stage, but people have the option to just look at a screen, a large screen behind them, which is just showing the puppetry, because there are cameras on the puppeteers, and the puppeteers have monitors at the base of the stage facing them, so they're able to watch what the camera is picking up and frame it up like a puppet TV show. So you can watch two shows essentially, which is what you're getting at Bob Baker, but like we don't really, it's not kind of presented that way. It's like all just sort of part of it. But so the Henson Puppet Up show is an uncensored show put together by Brian, Jim's son, and Patrick Bristow of the Groundlings. Yeah. And so they created the show that has like seasoned improvisers doing these incredible puppets. Like I think they're called the miscreant puppets. That's like the classification of, so I guess like say Henson, there's like Muppets, so these were called the miscreants, and it's like a full cast of close to like 80 puppets with like weasels and aliens and rabbits and koalas and cheetahs and poodles and crazy awesome Henson grade puppets. And so we would come in and just it was like it was like central casting for puppets. Like we would get put in scenes, like broken up into scenes with each other. We would do improv exercises, and then we would get to pick, what puppet spoke to us, and get notes more on the technical stuff. They really let us like have fun with the improv. I mean, with the a couple Groundlings basics of like do's and don'ts, yes ands, and
So Molly, what do you remember any of the characters you played at that time?
They had so many great animals. I don't remember the characters we did, but there were two different groups. So I was in the beginning puppetry class with people who were mostly improvisers learning puppetry. So we were given our own puppets from Kevin. Kevin Clash was our teacher. So I have a beautiful like purple monster named Charlie that we practice with the most, I would say. And then
can you do Charlie's voice for us?
He's just a happy guy.
Oh, I didn't see him there.
He's super excited about life. He loves hugs. Yeah. He's just super cuddly.
Because we were split up after like the first maybe just a few weeks, because the process of it all, apparently like the submission call for auditions went out and 1,100 people submitted. Wow. Around 400 people were auditioned. And 25 were selected. Wow. And actually, of those 25, it was like the Bachelor of puppets. Like only 20 people were given roses. And truly, like they whittled us down a bit and then divided us. Wow. And then again, this was another time where I was like, why did I come with such an emphasis on puppetry? Because I would have loved to be in that class with Kevin and Molly and stuff. But yeah.
What was your class? What was this?
It was incredible. Like working with Alan and stuff, and people like, there were people who also had puppetry background before in my class. And so Alan Troutman is a fantastic puppeteer and voice actor, a great improviser over at Henson, a wonderful teacher.
Wait, describe more the difference. Like, so were you like making the puppets? What was the difference?
We continued to work with the miscreant puppets in that class, and we were like it's like, I don't want to say it as like a negative spin, but we weren't given practice puppets to take home and stuff, because I guess the way they split us up was Kevin was getting people more up to speed and giving them kind of work and assignments to do at home, to practice at home and continue.
We were doing starting from the very beginning, basics, because his group was more people from around the country and Canada who were already puppeteering.
Yeah.
And my class was like all improvisers learning to be puppeteers.
So what puppet experience had you had before that?
Well, it's like very like humble beginnings. I was just really trying to like teach myself, like watching, and I was collecting puppets on eBay. I never thought that building would be a possibility for me. And I took my first, there was at one point in Sherman Oaks, a place where you could take classes from an old, he used to be Snuffleupagus on Sesame Street. His name was Michael Earl, and he sadly passed. So the company no longer exists. But for a while, I took a class there and immediately got like a job there and just tried to soak up as much as I could. And I started building my own puppets and got like completely obsessed with it. But I met, that's when I started to meet a lot of people in the community, as well as Alex, our boss at Bob Baker. And yeah, just really like, oh wow, like it's so much more than just like being a Muppet fanatic and wearing like Muppet t-shirts and like how good your Kermit impression is. Like once I realized like there is such a place for people not just to, I don't just kind of follow in someone's voice, that which is, it's so great. You see so many people who love it, and they love it to the point of being like, oh, Cookie, like, oh, puppets like that sound like this. And, it's great, and but I wish everyone kind of would pull the wool, so to speak, the felt off their eyes, and see how much more there is, and there's so much room for expression outside of the Muppet vein.
Yeah.
But it's so what I meant by like I wish that I had been with Molly is like the whole group exchanged information, the beginning and the advanced class, and we took it on our own to meet up and continue exercises in groups and stuff. And like right away I was like, oh, I really love working with Molly. She has like such great character range. And I think that's when I kind of also like it clicked again, was like, oh my gosh, like what I used to love about doing voices or just the idea of voice work is that it doesn't, like what you look like or your type, it has nothing to do with it. It's really like as far as your imagination goes, you can be, and Molly plays a range from like a grizzled, jilted, rat with like a Brooklyn accent and a smoker's voice to like a really happy but sadistic wishing dragon, and like what kind of audition process do you have that opportunity as just an actor, Right.
That's really interesting that in a way it sort of opens up so many more possibilities for you. So what happened? So take me to post Henson Summer, and you have this community of people now, and you guys want to keep going. So what happened after that?
So I decided to start a show because I was doing a lot of stand-up too. So I wanted to stay in the puppetry community and the stand-up world. So I started the show When Puppets Are Your Only Friends at the Lyric Hyperion because I was living like a block away. And it was originally half stand-up, half puppetry, so I could like And then I asked Jared to perform, of course. I asked everybody in the program if they wanted to perform. And then he asked to be like my musical co-host. I didn't
so much ask as write a theme song for the first time and use part of my time to do that. So I made it.
So you wrote the theme song for When Puppets Are Your Only Friends as a way to sort of cement your position as a cast member.
It inspired me so much. I mean, I think it's what I always wanted, but never had the gumption or like know-how or wherewithal. Like Molly was, like a producer at that point already, and had this incredible idea and to do this, and I think that's what so few people in the community, like in puppetry, like rather than waiting, sitting by the phone, waiting for a phone call to make your dreams happen. Molly had this idea, like, let's just do it. Like we were given these tools. So what were we going to do with them? Let's like, and so she kept the momentum up in that way. And so I was so inspired by that. And I knew that I had these characters, all these puppets that I had built, and I wanted to have a vessel for that, a vehicle. And I think at the beginning, even though it was like this stand-up puppet hybrid, the puppets would come out and still walk up to the mic and do their time, and it'd be still like, puppet observational. And so when you have that, it's kind of like, oh, well, that's not necessarily so fair for the stand-up people who come in and have to, how are you going to follow a puppet You know, with you must better be hot takes.
So, how did you come up with the title of this show, Molly? Because it's very funny.
I don't know. I was kicking around a bunch of stuff. I like a long title, I guess. I think it's like very specific but very true. So yeah, and then we were at Lyric. I did it at Second City one time, and then we were at the Clubhouse for a while, and then went back to Lyric, and then we started kind of picking up speed once we were back at Lyric.
And this was monthly. This is a monthly show?
Yeah, yeah. At that point, yeah. And then we started getting more into. It became less stand up, and more like variety acts, and I also was in doing clowning, so more of the clowning community, like from Wet the Hippo and Idiot Workshop, and
A lot
then
of people at Lyric Hyperion too. I mean,
yeah, Lyric people.
Yeah, yeah. Which is in Silver Lake. I don't know if we said that.
And what was I gonna say?
Well, the title, it's almost like for the kids, they're, you know, everyone's like framing things with their hashtags, and I don't know what they're doing, but yeah, that feeling when it's almost like, yeah, this is our kind of the category. Like you come into the show and you sort of experience what it's like to be, say, on the set of like a wacky children's show that's almost more geared toward adults. Like it's our Pee-wee's Playhouse. And so you come in and you meet Molly and Jared, two like puppet best friend weirdos, and also all these characters that we play, and it's in this way that isn't like, okay, time to go behind the stage now. We want people, especially like puppeteers, but also people who don't readily see puppet shows, who like took it upon themselves to for a night of puppety culture, you know, they come to that show, and it's not all of those preconceived notions of an illusion being shattered if you can see the how the sausage is made. That's going to remove it, and that you won't be able to suspend your disbelief. And I think that's what excites me so much about this show. And it not only makes it accessible for people who are like, wow, I could just walk up on, like, in front of people and do a character. And, you know, there is a common thread for puppeteers, which is like shyness, and they use that externalization as a way to step outside of their shell. And for people like that to see Molly and I play to like a sold out, we now do our show at Bob Baker, and we went to San Francisco Sketch Fest, and you know, that was huge for the show. And so for people to see us, not ventriloquists, we love ventriloquists, we have them on the show. We had a great one the night you were on our show. But we appreciate all brands of puppetry. One of the puppets in the background doesn't appreciate all brands of puppetry, apparently. Sorry about that. So no, but we just love doing it like that for people. So we walk on stage, we perform our puppets, our hand puppets, right there in front of everybody, and then we sort of cease to exist when they're there. But sometimes we'll play the line, and we acknowledge the fourth wall, and like that humor kind of makes everyone more comfortable. When we get out in front of the things, or like the puppet will turn to me and be like, is this bothering anybody else? I can see this guy's lips moving. You know, something as simple as that. Like then it kind of like, oh, whew, you know, we can all watch in this non-cynical way. Yeah.
No, I love that. I had never seen puppets performed not behind a stage, or not, you know, not concealed. Deconstructed. That's a good way to describe it. Before I came to LA, I'd never seen that either. So that's a really good point. And it does make it really interesting. And you do get a sense, I think, of more of the artistry behind it. Just the acting and improvisation that you're talking about. That side of the craft really, I think, shines that way.
Yeah, a new part of like our mission has become exposing people to different types of puppetry too. So not just hand.
Yeah, go through the list of the types of puppets for us.
Hand puppets, hand and rod, marionettes.
So hand puppet. I think so. The distinction there would be when the arms are operated by a little stick, like Kermit the Frog. You'll sometimes see a little rod. So that's a hand. Your hand goes up, Kermit. and your rods operate the
Move
hands.
the hands. Marionettes, there's shadow puppetry.
Marionettes are string puppets.
That's what we do at Bob Baker, the Bob Baker Marionette Theater. Currently working on a new show, Spooktacular, that'll open September 22nd.
For those of you that don't know, where have you been? But the Bob Baker Marionette Theater just reopened in Highland Park. Please come see a show. It's incredible. And you really get a sense of Molly and I really get to do so much of what we love, like on and off the stage there.
So talk about, I want to hear how you got involved with Bob Baker and also about the transition to working with marionettes, because that's a much more technical and seems way more complicated. Tell me about that.
Okay, first, wait, for all the puppet curious out there, I want to fire off the rest of, at least the puppetry types I know.
Shadow.
There's shadow, when you're casting shadows with light, like that's kind of probably one of the oldest traceable puppet shows, because, people telling stories in caves, you can imagine, the barking dog, the bunny, classic hand puppets of old. And then there is a Japanese style of puppetry where there are 3 puppeteers operating one puppet. It's so like choreographed and synchronized. That's called bunraku.
And that's when they wear all black and they kind of disappear.
Usually there's different styles. I mean, there's like bunraku where it's like usually tabletop. So the puppeteers are actually in that way a lot closer to the puppetry. So whether their faces are hidden or not, like, is not always the case. But you really just see like this intense focus, and like, so one puppeteer is just like moving sort of the head in the direction of where it's facing. The other is operating like the motion of the feet. And yeah, it's incredible to watch. There's water puppetry that's like Thai and Burmese. Like there'll be marionettes and so the puppeteers are above sort of a stage, but there's the marionettes themselves are floating through the water. Sometimes the puppeteers are immersed in the water themselves. Chinese New Year, when you see multiple people operating a dragon and like the choreography of those kinds of dance, that's very much like people don't think of it, but it's like the same way as like, wow, like a snuffleupagus or Big Bird. There is someone inside operating every possible mechanism. So like giant puppets, and there are people, Wayne White, like there are people who build these giant kind of parade puppets that are also multiple people operating, so that they're, larger than life. So many styles. Ventriloquism, so dummies and the animation, and also throwing voice. And so then that's a whole nother plate, metaphorically. Like if you're spinning all these plates, the technical stuff, then you're also adding the fact that you're hiding the fact that you're this voicing the puppet. And
Magic trick.
Yeah, and I think that ventriloquism is like one of the first ones where it's just like they really explored the relationship of puppeteer and puppet in that way that is tongue-in-cheek, of being like, like he said it, I didn't. And everyone knows, obviously, but if they are able to do it well enough and kind of have this real distinction between characters, that we're seeing them play both in real time, it's insane to watch. I mean, there are puppeteers who can do it even without voice, even without ventriloquism. Pam Severns, I always cite her as one of the finest puppeteers who does that split of Pam on stage as herself and this bunny rabbit on a date. And it's so crazy to watch her do that without any dialogue. And it's such a 2 different performances simultaneous. It's like watching someone, I don't know, drive stick shift, but in the most interesting way. Marionettes. So once you started
How'd you get into marionettes?
exclusively at Bob Baker, like where else are you going to learn? And so Molly and I were doing the show together. I got a job at Bob Baker while I was also working at Lyric Hyperion, just like trying to just get as much stage time as possible. So I was working in the cafe by day and just like doing our show, Molly and I, together at night. And I got a job working the spotlight at Bob Baker. I just wanted to have more, like, I was just trying to move away from having any kind of day job that wasn't artistic, which is like, oh yeah, you and everybody, like, get in line, buddy. But I was very, very fortunate that I realized like even though I don't do marionettes and they for sure intimidate me with all those strings, how cool would it be to have a day job at, I get to, I'm being paid to essentially watch a puppet show. All I have to do is point the light at the action. I get to eat all the ice cream I want. Sign me up. So I started as the spotlight op there, and it's the best job to have in the beginning because you watch those puppeteers run around and you see the footwork exit, and the spotlight itself becomes a puppet. That's what's the best about Bob Baker is it's like Tiki Room. Like you can make every single thing in that theater come alive just like a puppet, and make it sing, like we say. The lighting effects, the curtain cues, the exits, and like when you land on the ground on like a certain beat, like watching the feet kind of tap along to the beat, like all of those things bring that whole theater alive in this like Pee-wee's Playhouse-y kind of beautiful way. So my first show was Halloween Spooktacular 4 years ago on stage as a puppeteer. I was so nervous, and I invited Molly, and she was nannying at the time, and so every time we had a new show, I'd invite Molly to bring Sabrina. Yeah.
I was living behind my friend's house in like a guest house, and in exchange for rent, I was like basically helping raise their baby, and so I bring her to every show.
Aww.
Yeah, so she loved it.
I bet.
Yeah. But yeah, Halloween was the Halloween show was the first show I saw, and yeah, I thought it was awesome. It's my favorite show by far. And then they were hiring people. They hired 3 of us to do, because they were going to do 2 holiday shows simultaneously. So I got hired along with Miguel and another woman named Grace. And so my first show was the Halloween show too, like a year later. And then, yeah, so Jared recommended me, and it was all like friends of a puppeteer that was already working there. Yeah, so
So did they train you on how to use the marionettes? How did that go?
It's a slow going process, but as we say at the theater, there are no small parts, but there are plenty of great puppets, like ensemble roles, and there are even ensemble puppets. Like sometimes you'll see one puppeteer operating a tandem control, which has multiple puppets to one control. So there'll be like chorus line of like candy people, or small soldiers, like little toy soldiers, or like these like bouncy clown slinky guys. And so you learn. Or right now this Halloween has so many group numbers, so it's such a great show for people to learn on, because there are like these flying. You go to Venus, you go to Mars, and you meet the Venusians and the Martians, and so like there are many tandem puppets where you're learning the basics of walking and stuff, as well as many characters that aren't like most marionettes people see, especially in Europe, like don't even have blinking eyes or moving mouth. Like it's all about kind of the finesse and the sort of very like sophistication of like the motion and stuff going along with it. But Bob's puppets, I mean, people see them and I think they tend to, I mean, this is a whole nother area of the conversation, but yeah, like you'll see little kind of slits on the side of the chin where the mouth opens on marionettes or dummies, and people see that, and it's kind of this unnatural thing now, because when you see a dummy, it's usually in this like horror vein, or
like
Annabelle or Jigsaw, or even like Goosebumps, for the younger generation, and ours have these marionettes, with the blinking eyes and all that. Not to mention that we also have so many clowns, and we love it. Like, it's like, well, I mean, when these puppets were made, like the circus was thriving. It was like late 40s, there was no kind of fear of clowns. And so it's like, we are trying to like uphold this very like squeaky kind of image of all these puppets and clowns and things, and like it's like such a tightrope walk to be punny, I guess.
People, it's popular right now to say that clowns are scary because of pop culture, and we are trying to destigmatize
Taking
the
it back.
clown.
Good, yes.
We're taking it back,
because,
literally.
because they are the heart of the circus,
Yeah.
and it's an ancient art, clowning. And also, people want to come in and immediately dismiss them as creepy, and that's such a like normcore thing to do.
Yeah, it's so close-minded.
So happy.
It's like, I don't, like, yeah, they see it and they're like, I don't know how to comment on this intelligently, so I'll, like, it just, well, it just, it's so easy to just say, like, ooh, nightmare fuel, or like something that you've heard someone say, you're like, that feels like a safe opinion to hold. And the worst is when people do it, like, project that onto their kids, like, because there's young families now, so many of these people, their only experience of it is Gacy, the original Pennywise, and all, or Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which is a puppet movie, I'll give them that. If they like killer clowns, then fine.
Well, parents pass their fears down to their children. It's just like, and it's super sad because little kids, toddlers are not afraid of clowns.
Mm-mm. There's plenty, like, there's a lot of intimidating about the theater. I mean, it's just like, it's, there's a lot of red, the ceilings are tall.
Loud music. And lights is what is an obvious thing that they're like overwhelmed by, but not the puppets. Yeah.
And it's awesome the same way that we were saying, like, it's many of these parents that think, oh geez, like, so you guys are visible the whole time, like, is there going to be any point where we don't see you, kind of thing, because they're worried that their kid, like, boy, like, I paid for the puppet show and then you guys are basically going to tell them Santa Claus doesn't exist. It doesn't, it's so crazy that
you're saying because it would destroy the illusion for the kids that the puppets are just operating themselves. Is that kind of what's going on?
Or at least maybe the parents will come in with that, or like, they use the puppetry in a way, so, like, if the kid does get a little psyched out, they'll go, it's not real, it's fake, and, like, why would we do that either? Why would we
Good point.
why would we want, like, oh, okay, so, like, we use this puppet, Shambles, he's the theater dog, and he's the least like a marionette in the way, like, many of them are anthropomorphic, like animals walking upright with, a lot of humanness about them. Shambles is a straight up dog who looks like he has real fur, and he's really scruffy, and in that way he's kind of more Teddy like, and so we use him a lot to approach more sheepish, unsure children. And so, like, it's, for me, the best thing to do in that situation with a kid like that is, like, bring Shambles out, don't get too close, but have him immediately sort of submit, and he gets down real low and the tail starts wagging, and, like, actually the in that moment, like, all the synapses are firing as a puppeteer, because you're not just a puppeteer, but you're really, there's no, like, you can't put your kind of character-y, like, oh, like, I'm gonna make a bunch of dog puns right now. Everything in my brain is like, what does a dog do? Like, when I was a little kid, like, how pumped would I get when Luke, my childhood dog, he is like a flea, and so Shambles can scratch his ear, he can lift his leg, and I can be like, Shambles, not inside. That's an opportunity for me, Jared the puppeteer, to be like, this is my dog, Shambles. And so I'm operating him, but I'm also kind of operating as this, I guess, I'm the conduit for the kid. I sort of mediate that experience for, like, he knows a lot of tricks. Would you like to tell him to sit? Kid then goes, Shambles, sit. Then I do that motion, and even though like I basically said, okay, spoiler alert, I'm gonna do exactly what you say, there's something about that payoff of, like, it's a learned dog. It learned, and it's like, good boy. They inherently, like, the things that we know about culture of being human and, like, having a family, like, that kind of kicks in, and the comfort kind of comes back, the sense of play. all children are puppeteers when they pick up their toys or their Legos, and they
animate them.
and
Yeah.
and at some point adults lose that sense that that is okay to, and then it's like such an important tool for communication for children to have that, like, you know, when we're like doing playing superheroes or Star Wars with our action figures or our dolls or our Barbies, and it's our show. We love audience participation. We love putting people in the puppety hot seat, and in a loving way, in a very loving way. So giving people the opportunity to puppeteer with us on stage, and we're literally at Bob Baker on the carpet. So it's like we hope that that reads like that is not too subtle, because we are really trying to bring everyone back to carpet playtime.
And yeah, we try to make each show like a party we would want to be at / a love letter to puppetry and to the audience in childhood. And so people feel we really take care of our audience and want them to feel like a part of the show.
Yeah.
Puppetry really speaks to lonely people, which is also kind of great about the title of the show. There's a certain comfort in knowing, like, at the end of Labyrinth, you know, they all go, you know, should you need us? You know, they at any point she could access her friends, as long as she just uses, like, she looks in the mirror and realizes the party's still going on in her bedroom. And the way Paul Williams, he wrote a lot of the music for the Muppets, and his music was so lonely pre-Muppets, and he spoke to like a generation of people that were just like love sick about like love that hadn't happened yet, you know? And it's so great that puppets do that in such a way that brings everybody together. And it is a big puppety party of all kinds of people, all different art. Like, and this last show we had, but yeah, we just saw
Is there
such a variety.
is there a big difference for you guys? I mean, do you prefer performing for kids or adults, or what's your favorite audience?
I like both. I mean, I really like performing for kids. I love like seeing them get excited and just be having a good time. But then, I mean, I'm just a performer, so I don't care what the audience is.
Whoever will listen.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I really enjoy what I like about working with Bob Baker, and I have to like always go back to that, is that I love working with kids. So I love seeing them excited about the puppets and getting really into it. So
we're living vicariously through that, you know. I think as a kid, who didn't want to just climb through that television set and I was so jealous of the children that got to just like play letter games with Grover, you know. And I wanted puppets to be my friends so bad, and now they are, but now I like get to do that, and I'm not hidden from them. I'm literally like just above. I have a bird's eye view of watching this beautiful, like watching children open up their souls to these characters that I'm playing, and they love so wholly, like, and in that way, like, it's such a therapeutic thing to do this and do it for kids, because you so many of these puppets, like, you can explore so many different feelings with them, and we, especially Bob Baker, because they're all, you know, someone else's creation, there's a lot of like preciousness about making sure that we represent them the way that they were intended to be. So it's kind of like, again, like the Rolodex, like you go in and the gears are turning, like, what is everything I know about a dog, or what is everything I know about Ebenezer Scrooge, or like a pumpkin, or, you know, like all these, a grumpy pumpkin who like, and he sings in the show, like, what's the matter with kids today? So so the character then is like, oh my gosh, he's a jack-o'-lantern who actually hates Halloween. He's like the Grinch of Halloween. And so you can be a super loving character, or you can be not like the elf with the naughty or nice list, and you can actually like threaten kids with putting them on the naughty list, and they love it. They love being told they're naughty, or they love being told to get off their my lawn. And it's crazy, because there's a way that you can actually explore parts of yourself that, you know, in society were you know, Mr. Rogers in that new documentary really spoke to this. But if that's a great watch for people who love puppets. He was afraid to get angry. He grew up in a household where he was kind of held back in that way. He wasn't able to really express himself or emotions that were uncomfortable. And that's all he did with puppets, was address scary, eggshelly topics in a really intelligent and profound way by simply exploring it through innocence. And so being loud and aggressive, and I have a lot in me, a lot of different things and emotions in me, and getting to be a puppeteer who you wear these masks and you take them on and off, and you're a truth teller. That's what puppetry is. And so you're just simply giving these puppets the voice to say what they need to say. And so when you do that and you actually externalize and separate yourself from it, I cease to be Jared, and I'm literally allowing this puppet to say what it needs to. And then watching the kid just accept that and just relate to that. Or I know that's what makes you tick. And like, isn't it great how Winnie the Pooh and that all of them like let Eeyore, this clinically depressed person, hang out at the party, and they never make him feel bad or like he's a Debbie Downer. He's just that's how he's himself, and that he is a place there. And that is just so beautiful. Like, and that is why, like, I will never not love doing this for kids. But I think what's wonderful about our show, When Puppets Are Only Friends, is that people still have those feelings. And it's, you know, I mean, we can still do those things, but in a way that's like, okay, yeah, now the floodgates are really open. We can really go anywhere. And not ruin childhoods, and, you know, reveal Santa Claus doesn't exist.
No, what you're saying is really beautiful. And it's a lot of what my work is about too, is about kind of bringing play more for adults too. Not forgetting that life is one big romp, you know, just that muscle of playfulness does get a little fatigued as people age. So staying in touch with that is actually, you know, really very important. I wanted to ask you guys, what is if you have any stories you could share, kind of most difficult puppet experience, or you know, any career highlights or lowlights that might be fun to recount?
We just did the Hollywood Bowl. That was huge. So Pink Martini, they came to see an afternoon show at Bob Baker, and then asked us to perform in their finale.
Wow. They must have enjoyed it.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So we got to do 2 nights at the Hollywood Bowl, where we came out at the end for their final song.
Cool.
And, you know, it was an audience of like 19,000 people.
On both nights.
Yeah. And also they were so nice to us, and just really genuinely wonderful people.
What puppets did you bring?
So their last song was Brazil. So I had a cactus. We had a
really cool, like very
dancing
Muppety,
cactus.
very 70s. His blinking eyes, and it blooms on stage.
Oh, wow.
So that's a cool cactus. And then I had a maraca playing mouse with these big ruffly, like mambo sleeves. And we just kind of tried to. There are all these amazing,
we were with a bunch of former Miss Americas that were on the show that night.
Yeah, really?
And then a bunch of Japanese businessmen that were also singing on the show. So we all came out in the catwalk and danced to Brazil.
Yeah. I guess Pink Martini, like that show, is just them bringing on a cavalcade of like a wide variety of colorful guests that, you know, and it was so cool of them to do that. And then just to include us, and they introduced us and like gave the address and told it that we reopened. It was just huge. It was huge for Bob Baker. We've gotten to do amazing things.
Anything else? Any other good stories?
We've had a lot of really cool guests on the show. on When Puppets Are Only Friends.
We had David Arquette on the
Who
show. and-
wrestled a marionette of himself.
Yeah, his grandfather was a puppeteer, so he's a huge puppet fan.
We had DJ Lance Rock from Yo Gabba Gabba, which is a really cool puppet street cred thing for our show. He's awesome and loves Bob Baker, and so he was all too pleased to do some fun puppet stuff on our show. Aparna Nancherla is like a wonderful comedian and very popular Twitter person that we had on the show. We just it's been so great. Like we bring on people that we're fans of that are in our community, like you, and then there's also like it's now kind of growing a following where like people are hearing about our show and like wanting to do stuff with us. Like Tim Nordwin is a musician from OK Go, and he has a new project called XXT, Zha Zha Technique. And so he and his partner Elena Flores performed on our show as characters, and it's so cool because then it's now becoming a thing like the Muppet Show in that way, where it's like people are coming to our show and they get to explore stuff that they're not necessarily known for, and there's a place for that. We're like, yeah, we want to watch Tim Nordwin, from the bass player from OK Go, play like an old grizzled grandma who does jokes from the Catskills, and like it's like so. It's just fun. It's like, and it's becoming that place where like, oh, it's playful for the adults. Like he's a grinding musician. Like they work so hard. And just for them to just like, be so generous with their time for us, for our show, but also for them, it's like one for us, one for them.
Yeah. It is funny that I will say that the reason I'm in show business is because of the Muppet Show. That is a fact.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, and also, I studied painting in college and I was painfully shy. So a puppet show was the first thing that I did. That was how I dipped my toe into live performance right out of college.
Let the puppets take the dive.
Yeah. So that was when I came up with the Carmen the Hot Dog Opera.
Oh my gosh.
So I did a
Must book
10-minute version of the opera Carmen with elaborately dressed tofu hot dog puppets, and they were like oil painted sets, and it was a big stage that I made with my dad. It was really cool. Yeah.
Oh my god.
That went really far that year. We won the Best Artscape event, which is like a big festival in Baltimore. It was very popular.
That's so cool.
Yeah. She gets stabbed with a fork and then squirts ketchup out at the end. And then Vienna sausage cherubs come out at the end. So I was into like food puppets and weird shadow puppets and stuff like that.
Yeah, I love that. Like people, we are very lucky that we're like working with the Stradivarius of puppets over at Bob Baker. But like, it's so like, I love when people just break the mold and like, and start playing with things around the house, because that is the most imaginative stuff you'll see is when people are just taking, say, like a curtain or a large piece of fabric, and they're manipulating it and folding it into multiple shapes. So like seeing something take many shapes, there is, like I was saying, like puppetry is truth telling. That is because a lot of these puppets, they're built with, a kind of built-in, you look at it and you kind of go, okay, who is this guy? But if you can literally take like a ball of foil and, turn it into a goose, then, or a lobster, it's like amazing that you can do so much so like there is no end in possibilities.
And I'm, as someone that is a maker of things, I like that aspect too, the craft aspect, in addition to live performance. I really appreciate that a lot.
Another person who really broke the mold, who performed with us, that we were like was major highlight for us. He was on the same show that you were on, is a guy from the UK named Barnaby Dixon. And Barnaby Dixon was, the entire time I've been working with puppetry, I was like, whoa, that guy's next level. He's a pioneer.
He's the future.
Can you describe it for people who don't know?
So Barnaby also has a very deconstructed style, because Barnaby comes from an animation discipline. So he was working with stop motion figures, and so he was working, armature wire and creating these little puppets that he would slightly adjust the motion of and then photograph stop motion puppetry, but you know, it's a very painstaking medium. Anybody who's in that like knows, and I think he was trying to find a play that was like more in real time. So he started to build these miniature puppets. So most of his stuff is made on a smaller scale that fits right onto the tips of his fingers. And so he'll like, so if you can imagine Charlie Chaplin with his two like bread legs, like little dance he would do with that, or you can imagine someone kind of doing a little high kick with their fingers. Uh, Barnaby Dixon kind of creates these characters that come apart by his two hands joined at the wrist, and creating these characters that move around and can jump, break apart, and the motion. So they're miniature, and he films them on a very kind of close scale. So you watch, they're usually shot for like YouTube, and he has a Patreon account, and then he makes and voices these puppets, and they're so technical. They're like these like steampunk-y, creation-y things that like you can see what makes them work, but they glow in the dark, and so he will do things where he ceases to, like, you won't see his hands anymore, and the motion he's able to get out of his hands, he's just such great articulation. And it was incredible, since he is known pretty much just for doing film, like creating videos content in the UK. It was insane to not only meet him here, he came to a Bob Baker show. We exchanged info, and the next time I saw he was in town, I just invited him to perform on our show, and he said yes. So like, you know, for him to do a live show was so cool. And we've now produced 3 events with him. So he did that, our show, When Poets Are Only Friends. We produced an artist talk, and then we decided to do a double bill with him a month before last. So yeah,
He just was at Dragon Con, and yeah, he's gonna be
he just worked
huge.
on Dark Crystal.
Yeah, he just worked on Dark Crystal.
Yeah.
He is the future.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a good segue. So what are your hopes for the future, for the puppet world, and for yourselves? And
I think to make our own thing for me. I mean, yeah, simple as like I got into this wanting solely like to just be Gonzo. I wanted to be Gonzo as a kid, and like literally him. And then I was like, as an adult, I was like, wait, maybe that's a possibility. Dave Goelz is the last. He's the original Gonzo. He's the last person still originally doing his character from that cast. And so like, yeah, it became this thing where it's like, oh my God, is that a possibility in sight? To then like at Bob Baker, my eyes being opened and being like, wow, this person's legacy that is not as oft sung as Henson. It's been a very proud experience to be a banner person for that legacy. But eventually, I think Molly and I absolutely have what it takes to build our own dynasty, and we're well on our way, I really think.
Yeah, I would like us to have our own TV show where it's like a comedy variety puppet show, but we're to a bigger audience.
Yeah.
And so that's...
and we infuse it with it is a comedy variety show that is like fun and fast paced for adults. We would love to be on Adult Swim, or I don't
put it out there in the universe.
Yeah, Comedy Central. We would also be good on Comedy Central. Oh my God. I mean, yeah, the freedom to just do more stuff in the like adult, like without, you know, network constraints would be amazing. But having a place to do that, and a higher level where we can actually put a spotlight for these unsung heroes. You know, everyone knows about Henson, but let's now, oh my gosh, let's put these marionettes on network television. Like let's have, and like little moments where we break segues, and it's an opportunity for these people that came before, that were still like kind of torch bearing, the last people kind of doing what is widely considered a dying art, that have now handed it off to Molly and I, the next generation. And we actually might have the opportunity to do it not just for passion, but on a larger level. It's like, I would be remiss not to shine a spotlight on those that like carried it over from that kind of awkward, you know, puppet depression, maybe that we're just kind of coming out of. Yeah.
I didn't realize is that part of the recession as well? The
I think-
puppet depression?
Well, I mean, whether or not there was a puppet depression, right now is like the puppet renaissance. Yeah. Renaissance.
I'm glad you used that word. That is the title of the podcast, after all. It's Viva la Renaissance.
Viva.
Because I believe in that too. Like I feel, I got to that point where I was like, it's not a revolution that I think we need. It's actually a renaissance. It's, through the arts that I think we will all be saved.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Just trying to create more opportunities and ways for people to get paid and to
Yes.
do what they do on a bigger scale and reach a bigger audience and all those things.
Yeah.
We're
Right
all
now,
working that.
the story is like, oh boy, yeah, you didn't get into puppets for the money, that's for sure. But like, I don't think it always will have to be. And I mean, our passion is there. We're currently doing it for love, and that's never going to go away. But I think we've got what it takes to make it accessible for all audiences, not just like, oh, this has intrinsic value solely in the puppetry community.
Yeah. No, what you guys do is obviously transcendent. Molly, would you say a little goodbye in maybe your rat voice from your show? What's your character's name again?
Regina the Rat.
Yeah.
Oh, to all you kooks and critters out there, goodbye from Regina the Rat. Farewell. I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you guys so much. This was great.
Viva la Renaissance!
Viva la Renaissance!
You can find Molly and Jared at Bob Baker Marionette Theater. Their Halloween Spooktacular will run for all of October, and that is also where they perform their monthly show, When Puppets Are Your Only Friends. Thank you for listening. Be sure to tell a friend and share this episode and subscribe wherever you're listening right now. I want to say thank you to Ambrose Martos, who is the first supporter of my Patreon. What a guy. Closing out the episode today, I have my friend Julia Haltigan from New York City, who was just in town last night. I was really excited. I got to go see her show. She is just phenomenal. She is a motorcycle riding, figure skating, guitar playing, singing badass. And I love her music, and she's very talented. True story is that we met doing a James Bond themed cabaret show in New York City. And it was a very funny show that ran for, I don't know, a couple months. It was really fun. And that's how we got to know each other a little bit. But she was in town last night, and I got to check out her show. And I'm wearing her T-shirt right now. I love you, Julia. You're wonderful. So please enjoy Julia's new song, The Debris of Love.